my really first experience with Pierre Boulez music and meeting him after the concert was the première of Répond, which stays in my memory as something really extraordinary. It was a fascinating moment of listening to the sound. I think that's 81. And I must say, I was still a student in Freiburg with Klaus Huber and Brian Fernandez. And it was a real, I think for everybody, it was quite an experience, because I don't think there's been many pieces like that before. We were in the hall, you had the ensembles, and you had all the soloists around you, and you had this all. So it was the first time I heard personally a piece, electronic and ensemble, and it was I was just amazed. And so when a couple of years later I was asked, I had a piece played with Ensemble Intercontemporain in Paris with Eötvös. And afterwards, after the concert, they asked me if I would like to, to come and work at IACAM. And first, at that time, you really had to learn how computers worked and everything. It's not like today at all. And so one of the reasons why I accepted straight away was because I had heard Répond, and I was very, really amazed just of all this possibility of sounds and spatialized sounds. I was really very fascinated. So, and that's when I really met him a couple of times and kept, meeting him, of course, because I was there often. And he also conducted a piece of mine once, and the premieres of the pieces with IACAM and Ensemble Intercontemporain was mostly there. And, so we were kind of having, I would see him every year or something like that, And I really, first of all, and I also go and listen to him conducting, rehearsing with Ensemble Intercontemporain, because I knew the musicians very well. And, it was just a fabulous experience. He was just a wonderful conductor, I think. And I learned also to appreciate him. I don't think he was probably always easy in many ways, and had this idea about certain things, and which I didn't always agree to. But, it's just somebody you can only respect, I find, because he was just a very good musician. And of course, when you have anybody who is high up has people down or around him saying bad things or criticizing him. But I think what he did for music was just enormous. And I must say, I was very, very sad when he passed away, because I had the impression it was like it's like a history book, and you turn the page and that chapter is finished. And I thought it was very, very sad and a bit, upsetting in a way. Even I was never, we were never close. We would keep, talking, and we would meet. And I think he respected what I was doing, and at least left me, keep on coming to IACAM and doing things. So, and we had some very interesting discussions sometimes. And I think he is one of these persons that influence you a lot, even if you feel that you're not at all like him. But it's just somebody, for me, I think one of the things is I've always been very influenced and attached to French music. And whatever people say, I think for me, it's a very clear line: Ravel, Debussy, Boulez. It's just the idea of the orchestra, the idea of orchestration which has in English, I guess, a perspective. You have a sound which is just not, it's like in painting. You have paintings which are on one level, or maybe you have two levels, and paintings which, like the Impressionism, where you have a picture which has a depth in the, and I find that in his music, like I find that in Debussy, is this idea of a sound which is not just on one level, but has really a deepness, and that I find fascinating. I mean, actually, one piece. I mean, for example, in the opera Berenice in Paris, he had passed away, and I just felt I somehow felt I had to make him homage. So in the first sequence, at one moment, Barbara Hannigan is singing some a kind of a small variation of one of the improvisations from Mallarmé as a kind of a gesture of respect, and I'm sure. I mean, originally I certainly wouldn't say he was the person who would influence me most, but there are many people. I guess, as you know, as a young composer, you have all kinds of influences, and I mean, and he was just, I think, as I say, definitely part of it. At least influence in the idea of what music is, or what music should be or could be, and what it means. You know, more than maybe on a sometimes maybe really on the paper, but what I think, which nowadays, where I would say I feel close, is I feel music is always harmony. So we're always talking about chords. So we're always talking about pitches, and I find, for me, pitches are very important and part of music. Which sometimes, recently I've heard young composers saying pitches are dead, so I feel a bit scared because I don't know what's left. But I think, you know, it's something, and of course that is clearly something he was very attached to also. So in that sense, I of course, you know, first of all, you know, the piece starts and ends with a B flat, which is ein B. And the other thing is, no, I mean, Hans-Georg Schmeisser I knew for a long time, because when I arrived, and even before I was nominated as a professor in Vienna, where been teaching composition for, well, since 93, I think, something like that. Just before I arrived, I met him because he played a piece of mine, which was a Irkam piece, actually, and he was the solo flutist. And I had arrived there and didn't know anybody really, and he just said, well, come over, you know, for supper. And we became friends. And so when I moved there, we met a lot, and didn't really work together, but we just, you know, friends. And I liked him a lot. And for at one moment, he asked me for a small piece, and I wrote a small piece called Epitome, just, you know, like that, because I really didn't have time, and I was but, you know, he's a friend, so I decided I'd somehow find the time. But it was it was just something that which I did for him, which I was happy to do, and I was not able to go to the first premiere after the first performance of it. So that's one story. And Emmanuel, I met a long time ago because he premiered a piece of mine with a triple concert with him. He played it with François Leleu and Paul Meyer. So it was a three soloists and orchestra called Sillage. And I thought he was wonderful. And I just, you know, he was amazing. They were all amazing, of course. But then, you know, they played it twice or four times, I can't remember. And then I suddenly just felt in that piece, the flute part was the most, had little virtuosity. So I suddenly, you know, said, well, somehow now I'm going to make a flute concerto for him. And as I once said to him, you know, if you have a flute like that, you want to know how fast you can play. No, I mean, you know, suddenly it was just, and I really like Emmanuel. And I was very touched because here in Geneva, I had a 60th anniversary concert, and he just jumped in to play the flute concerto just like that. That was a crazy thing for him, because the next day he had a rehearsal in Berlin with the Philharmonica. And I was really touched that he he just did it. And so I decided, well, I just have to do a piece for him. And so when all this was coming together, you know, I knew he's going to be 50. And so I decided I should write a piece for him. And then, you know, thinking, well, Hans-Georg passed away, also died of a heart attack. So it was a very sudden death. So all this was happening in the same moment. And then the virus came, and all this shut down, and this very particular situation. And I just found, well, now is the right moment to do it, you know. And so I'm very happy because in a way, it's something that becomes real, especially in this moment where so many things are canceled or not happening, or everything is so difficult in a way at this moment. So it's so strange. So I'm very happy that this is going to happen because because I was very fond of Hans-Georg, and I'm very fond of Emmanuel, Pahud, I was very fond, in a different way, but of Boulez. So I'm very happy that all this comes together. I mean, what I was saying before about sound, the idea of orchestration with a sound that can move and have a depth. I mean, I have many souvenirs. For example, I was in Tanglewood a long time ago when I was young, and I heard the rehearsal of the Prélude de l'après-midi d'un faune with Bernstein. And I was really that was one of the very strong moments in my life, because he suddenly stopped the orchestra and said, well, please, you know, the ending with this dee da dee da dee da da, and he said, please, all the violinists, after this bar, the first pult, you stop playing, then the second pult, then the third pult, then the fourth. And you suddenly had this idea of this sound drift going away. Really, it was fascinating. So for me, since that day, and you know, I've been studying scores of Debussy or Boulez, or I have an idea that even without electronics, sound is something that moves. And so when I'm writing, I have this image. I have an imagination of these trajectories, the trajectoire, or these paths that from a sound going to somewhere, that maybe you have the last double bass and the sound goes then onto the other side, the hall, and this kind of thing. So I'm always, even when I'm composing, thinking of this. But of course, then each hall is different, each orchestra is different, there's different positions. But for me, space is part of sound and part of music. A solo instrument, of course, is very special, but I mean, you see, I think a flute is a very special instrument also, others also, but because, you know, I mean, that's what you learn in French orchestration also, is that a flute, when a low register it's not dynamically loud, but it's a full sound, because the sound is like this. It comes from the close, and everything's close. It comes out like this, as if you have a high note, which is loud, then the sound goes out that way. So there's different directions of how a sound exists with the flute, with other instruments also, but this is very special with the flute. And because you have a very low full, you talk about volume, in volume in French. So it's more, I mean, it's just, you have a very rich sound in the low, which might not be as loud as high, of course, but it has a direction which is much more into the public. As for this, it goes more in this way. It has a different origin. I've been having a lot of problem concentrating. I have to write another piece right now, and it's very difficult. I've had a lot of problem just imagining. I realized, you know, for me, music is something that has to do with our environment. It's something and I think a composer has something like Botschaft, a message. It's a testimony about something about what the world is and where we are. And so to suddenly be cut from all this reality somehow cut me personally from this idea of writing music, because even if I'm part of a family of musicians that write music that might not be the most successful. Compared to pop music, other kinds of forms of music. But I do believe that it's something that has to live and that lives with people, which exists. I think music exists through. It's a composer writing a piece for a musician. The musician needs the composer needs the musician, and both of them need the public. So, and this is a common experience, and it's something extraordinary when something which is actually very abstract. You have a pitch. A pitch is something completely abstract. It's a frequency, and of course you can do all kinds of things with dynamics or something to try. But what's wonderful is, and so mysterious, and I've been trying to understand since I've been a child, is why do two free pitches suddenly start to make sense? Why does it suddenly impress somebody in the sense of giving an impression of something that can make them laugh or cry or feel touched? I think all this is a whole cycle, and suddenly to cut something like that was for me very unpleasant, I must say, and a bit. It has also kind of changed my way about thinking about music. Or I'm not quite sure how I'm thinking about music right now. So again, you see, what I meant was also very important for me, because I always like to write. That's why I've written many concertos, for solo instruments and orchestra. So Tabea Zimmermann, Isabel Faust, Ilya Gringols, François Leleu, because it's something has to do with the fact that it's a connection to it's about a human being meeting another human being and talking to him and giving him something of yours, and he's helping you get this exists. So I was very happy to be able to work with Manu here, because it suddenly is also, and again, I'm working for somebody, so it gave me a sense. As for if you're writing for something for an orchestra, it's very, unless it's an orchestra that it's more abstract in a way. I realize, looking around, many young colleagues have been very inventive and working with this situation. I've been a bit lost with the situations. I really don't know. I'm going to be very, very, as I say, I'm very curious of listening to this and seeing how people will react to this, and how they, yeah, it's a difference. It's like talking to somebody on a Zoom meeting. It's not the same as talking with face to face. So it's not that there's an impossible communication, but it's a different communication. And time will say if it's better, worse, as valuable. I don't know.